Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining us this evening. If possible, you can mute yourselves for just a second while I walk us through NCTFA's mission and a fun activity we had planned for this evening. If you haven't done it before, Mentimeter will be a blast. And if you have, well, it's a blast. So thank you for joining us for NCTFA's sixth town hall. Our mission here at the New Connecticut Farmers Alliance is to bring together emerging and existing farmers from across Connecticut to network, share resources, and identify common challenges and opportunities for more accessible, successful growth. Oof, Caitlin. Okay. We can go to the next slide when you have a chance, Melissa.
Sorry, Allie, I don't know how do you go to the next slides.
Oh, is somebody else
Someone
leading?
else is doing this. Yeah.
Oh,
Did it not work? Did it not go to the next slide?
it didn't, Ella. I'm
Oh
sorry.
no. Oh no. Why not? Sorry.
No worries. I think while Ella is troubleshooting that, the purpose of Mentimeter is a way for us to kind of digitally see who's in the room. In the past 5 years, we've all been joining Zoom spaces, and a way of kind of understanding who's in our space is to use this really cool app. And we want to thank the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut for making tonight possible. And now, if you could get your phones out or go to the website menti.com, you can either scan this QR code or go to the website and put in the code here, 43547496. And I'll give you guys a few seconds to do that. Please do it regardless of if you are listening in or presenting, because we'd love to just get the information for the questions we'll be asking. And what is pretty neat about this is we'll be able to have this information for future viewings. But if you're watching this on YouTube or on our site later, you will not be able to do the Mentimeter. I'm so sorry. But we've had a couple seconds, so I think we can go to our first question. Whoop. So the first question that you can answer on the Mentimeter site is where do you live and farm and or farm? Because we have some farmer allies here on the call tonight. And as you can see, it's filling in live on this map. Um, Telling you verbally feels good so that we're represented that way. Thank you everyone for filling this out. We've got folks from all over the state on this. Coming from is how long have you been a farmer? So we've got some options here, whether you haven't started yet, whether you have just gotten into the field in your first 1 to 3 years, if you are in it in the 4 to 7 year bracket, or you've been patching up your overalls with 8 plus years, or if you find yourself to be a farmer ally. And tonight we have a lot of what we in our meetings have been calling sophomore and senior and not senior, junior year farmers with 8 plus years. But I'm so happy to see this big spread of folks on the call tonight. Thank you so much for answering that question. Lastly, if you are a farmer on the call tonight, what do you produce? We'd love to know. Okay, we've got some vegetables. I love a I love an unknown purple other. Livestock representing. Okay, I'm seeing medicinal Hernan crops. Can you only pick one, Robert? I'm sorry to say I do not know, but oh, thank you for introducing yourself in the chat. Dr. Yvette is here from East Haven, Healing by Growing Farms. Oh, and unfortunately, it only allows one, so you're gonna have to pick your favorite thing you produce first. It looks like we've got a mostly veg farmers, followed up by livestock and flowers, and a mysterious other. And to round us off, We would love if you could put in a word or maybe just a sentence, and Mentimeter will aggregate the different words you're sending in and do something that's called a word cloud. So take a couple seconds and think about what are the agricultural issues that are most on your mind today. Um, Awesome. Sustainability, disaster, organic. Yeah, those organic certifications are not cheap. So I think a lot of folks are great. Yeah, number one almost always is land access. That's for many, many years been the number one concern of new and beginning farmers in the state. We're seeing farm viability, health insurance for real, housing, equity, farmland affordability, processing. Oh, yeah, it's growing. This is so cool. Thank you. Market access, information support. Ooh, costs, of course, like kind of across the board, disaster. Thank you, everybody. This is awesome. I love watching it change and grow. The bigger words are the ones that more people have entered in. And I'm gonna say thank you so much for this fun activity. Now we have a good sense of who's in the room, what our shared interests are, and directions we can take our work tonight on the town hall. So with that, I want to give the floor to our three voices that you'll hear from for most of tonight before we get to the Q&A that we're all looking forward to. First and foremost, since joining the department in 2019, he served on the Tallinn Town Council, had a tenure in the House of Representatives, worked at USDA's Farm Service Agency or FSA, did some time at Wholesome Wave and Farm Bureau, before joining our wonderful Department of Agriculture. So we're really happy to welcome Commissioner Bryan Hurlburt again for the sixth town hall. It's wonderful to have this space to dialogue with a commissioner of agriculture and also have him listen to new and beginning farmers, our needs, our curiosities, and him and our bureau director, who's joining us tonight, Jaime Smith, share the resources that are going to make the work of being a farmer in our state sustainable and keep it equitable and think about the liberatory possibilities of the future that come with farming. So we're also so happy to have Jaime Smith on here. Anyone who has applied for a grant with the department or hopes to, that's a face that you will know. And I want to say congratulations in advance for, I think it's going to So if you're going to be 22, your time on the panel, I would just love if you want to drop your skincare routine at any point in the chat, Jaime. And we're being moderated tonight by the one and only owner and operator with her husband, Lawrence, of Sunset Farm, Caitlin Kimball. Sunset Farm is in Naugatuck and Milford. They've been growing veg, cut flowers, and fruit for 7 years, USDA certified, doing the thing. But in addition, Caitlin's also worked as the director of agriculture at City Seed here in New Haven, Connecticut, and last month was just elected Burgess for Naugatuck. So we don't know when she sleeps, but we're so grateful she doesn't because I get to serve alongside Caitlin on the policy subcommittee here at NCTFA. So if you're interested in being a part of the New Connecticut Farmers Alliance policy subcommittee, where we talk about federal, state, and local level policy and put together events like this town hall, DM me, get in the chat, whatever. But I'm going to send it over to Caitlin to kick off moderating our town hall. And thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Hey everybody, good evening. Thank you, Ellie. I was cracking up at some of what you were saying, a very kind introduction. I'm really happy to be with everyone tonight. I'm going to kick it off to the commissioner who's going to start us off with some just updates and some comments on some progress that we've made this year. And then I'll kind of go through the form of questioning and some of the topics we're going to cover. So Commissioner Hurlburt, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, Ellie, for that kind introduction. I didn't even know that Jaime was going to be celebrating 20 years at the in the coming spring. So that's good to know as well. Want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. I didn't realize it was our sixth, but we started this at the beginning of the pandemic as a way to communicate and make sure that we had open lines of open channels to share thoughts and ideas, and really appreciate that Ella's taking this on and making sure that we continue to have this space. And that also, I was reflecting that the first time I got involved with the New Connecticut Farmer Alliance was before there was a New Connecticut Farmer Alliance, just about a dozen years ago when I was at USDA, and we were meeting in the conference room in Tolland to figure out what this thing could be and how different organizations could support it. So great to see that it is still thriving and doing well. I'm going to give a couple updates on what we've been focused on at the department. Jamie's going to talk a little bit about our grants and some of the work that we've done and some of the accomplishments that those grants have given. The department's really been focused on increasing diversity in agriculture. Diversity as to who is farming in Connecticut, which means expanding to BIPOC farmers, women, veterans, new and young farmers, first generation farmers that are coming in as a second career, where they're farming and selling their products. So moving from our traditional rural landscapes into more urban and suburban lands and more market access in those communities. We're also interested in investing on how they are changing the way they farm with more controlled environment agriculture, climate smart technologies and practices that have come to the forefront. We're also helping them change what they are farming with supporting more culturally appropriate foods and farmers for different ethnicities that reflect the state of Connecticut. And then finally, we're also thinking about how we can help them diversify what they're selling and increase the value-added production in the state so that farmers can share of every market dollar. You'll see those guiding principles reflected in our guidance documents. You'll see them reflected in the awards that we announce during our grants, and you'll see it in how we approach the work that we do when we're building new programs or responding to different farmers. And a couple of really important highlights that I wanted to share on our program year. This past year, just last week, we closed our Farmers Market Nutrition Program. We closed with over $900,000 redeemed through that program. Last year, it was $1 million redeemed through that program. Those are the two highest years in the program's history. And importantly, I think many of you all know that every dollar redeemed through the Farmers Market Nutrition Program is a dollar that supports a Connecticut farmer and a Connecticut family. It's a great program. We're very proud of the work that it's done, and really, with under Jamie's watch, been able to rapidly increase and expand the reach of FMNP. We're at almost $5 million invested through the Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids grant program, connecting students with farmers, connecting students with food, making sure that our public dollars are being used to support small businesses across the state. We worked with Food Share on the Connecticut NAP program, which is a nutrition assistance program. They received a total of $9 million in the biannual budget this past year. They've dedicated 15% of that to purchase from farmers as a way to help support the work that we did with LFPA. On our Ag Transition Grant Program, we had nearly $4 million of projects that were applied for project costs that were applied for, I should say, out of 80 applications. And a few years ago, we started the new and beginning farmer micro grant program. Of the 80 applications that we had this year, 23 were new and beginning farmers. And we were able to award a significant number of those. So we're really hitting on all the points that we have been focused on. I think we've had a great year at the Department of Agriculture. I will also knock on wood and say this was the first year that I've been commissioner that we haven't had a disaster. We haven't had a major significant weather event. So it actually allowed farmers to focus on their production and not manage what Mother Nature was throwing at us. We had a great year at the legislature. We're going to talk more about the Connecticut Farm Bill and the Farmland Access Grant that passed, that created huge opportunities and for farmers to take advantage of. And thank you to the folks who joined us back in July in South Windsor with the governor for a ceremonial bill signing of those two bills. And I'll share, those two bills, as significant as they were, could not have happened without a collaborative effort, without the department and partners across the state, like the New Connecticut Farmer Alliance. We could not get these bills through the legislature. So it's important that we continue this collaboration, the communication, but it's also important that young farmers show up. And new and beginning farmers show up to the state capitol and testify, that they bring their legislators out to their farm to introduce, what etiquette to farm. So please, if you haven't invited a legislator to your farm, take advantage of the opportunity to. They will come. They will be interested. And you will create a new ally at the state capitol, somebody who will know your email or phone number when you call, and tell them what is happening and why the state legislature could be an important part of your future in the state of Connecticut. I also want to say that we think about the future a lot, and I didn't touch on this, but I should have. We also invested $4.5 million through our farmland preservation program this year, adding 10 farms to the protected status in over 700 acres. We're working on a couple more that we are hoping to close by the end of the calendar year. I've got some documents to sign back in the office that should cover that. But it's really important that we think about how we can create a strong future for Connecticut agriculture, and we model our programming and our tools to do that. And this year we had a great year with some really nice numbers to roll out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jaime Smith. As she was introduced, she leads our grants and farmland preservation work. She and her team have been doing great work rethinking about how we approach some of these tasks. And really are the drivers behind a lot of those accomplishments that is able to share out. So Jaime, over to you.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm going to do a screen share if that's okay, Caitlin. Yeah. I put a short little presentation together just to highlight some of the major grant programs that we are overseeing here at the Department of Ag. Some of them are very familiar. And I certainly hope that if folks have not heard about these programs and there is an interest, please reach out to the staff at the department. Allie Rose, or Allison Grabaz, we have multiple Allies in the Bureau. Allie Rose manages our farm transition grant. This grant program has been around since 2006, originally funded by the Community Investment Act. And we funded almost $9 million worth of grant programs. So I'm really proud of this program. It's gone through a lot of changes over the years. I'm going to highlight some of those in just a minute. But as Commissioner said, last year of the grants awards that we made, 12 of them were to new and beginning farmers under 3 years. So I look forward to telling you a little bit more about those. And if folks have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'm happy to answer them as we move on or at some point throughout the conversation today. So right now we have our farm transition grant open. Again, that's the one that all of our farmers really want to pay attention to. The other program that's forthcoming is our Ag Enhancement Grant Program. That is open to municipalities, councils of government, and ag nonprofits. That program is actually opening later this week and will run through February. So if there are any folks involved in nonprofits, or say you have an ag commission in your town, this is the program that they want to pursue. But for our farmers, some more details. Let's see, hang on, I just want to make sure I'm advancing this. This should be. Okay, sorry. So the program to highlight, especially for folks on the call, is our Farm Transition New Farmer Micro Grant Program. This program, we established the micro grant category about 5 years ago. And this has been an extremely on the call is to quickly go through some of the programs or projects, I should say, that farmers have applied for, just to give everyone an idea of what you can pursue. This program is really open-ended. And I think a lot of times folks are like, oh, that's great. But at the same time, it can be like a little overwhelming. What exactly can I apply for? So these examples that I have up on the screen, we have one that was to renovate an existing room in their barn and turn it into a farm store. Every project that we fund is meant to transition a business into a new commodity, a new service, transition a building into a new purpose. And all of the New Farmer Micro Grant Awards are $5,000 or less. We do have a 25% cash match, but that is the max award for this particular category. Another New Farmer program was to purchase a maple candy machine, a cotton candy maker. The return on investment on that is really good, folks. A filter press and a maple syrup bottling unit. So those are small pieces of equipment to help them take their business from not just traditional maple syrup to value-added maple products. And then the third example is to purchase materials and supplies to construct a livestock barn. So they wanted to expand their production and they didn't have the room and the space to do that. So we covered the materials and supplies to build a new barn. One thing that I do want to share with everyone is we now will advance 50% of your total award to you. Execution. You just simply have to send us, especially from new farmers who might have limited, they don't have a lot of credit. Banks aren't just dying to lend them money. We have found that providing that cash up front really helps for project completion and overall success. So just know that that is an opportunity. Okay, there we go. All right. The second category for folks who have been around for a little while in production for 3 years or more, we have our infrastructure grant program. This has a max award of $24,999. It does have a 50% cash match. And here are some examples of mobile chicken tractors and electric fencing to expand poultry production. We have a barn expansion and then grain storage. Obviously, bigger barn, more feed is necessary. Vineyards also, they purchased a side dressing compost mulcher spreader. So this was not only about improving efficiencies, but it was also a climate smart related project, which is also a very important area for us. We also realize that folks want to explore and do a little bit of research, and we have the research and development grant within the farm and we're transitionalized. So if you are tipping that scale of 3 years or more in production, this is the space that you really should probably dig into. I only have 2 examples here because this isn't the most popular category, but one that we feel is really important. So this also has a max award of $24,999. It only has a 40% cash match. And I'm going to send this presentation to you, Caitlin and Ella, so you can share this with folks if they're interested and read more on these specifics. But it's about doing research and assessing the marketplace for a new product. So here's an aquaculture related one. And then Samad Gardens also did one about their herbal tea blends and scaling. So really great opportunity, very underutilized. And then the last one that is sort of a spin-off of the research component is the Innovation and Diversification Grant Program. This has a max award of $49,900, and it has a 25% cash match. So this is really scaling up. So Holcomb Farm used it for a potato digger, to move to commercial scale production. Roland Farm used it to convert an existing barn to produce artisan cheeses. They're also now doing yogurt. And, you know, this is a space where if you have a really sizable project that's really going to transition your business, this is a category you may want to pursue and consider. With that, I'm going to take a pause and just see if there are any questions. And we can take it from there, Caitlin.
Hi, yes, sorry, I don't know who that is.
All right,
that's
guys,
not
have a
muted.
wonderful night. And good luck with the tournament.
There's another Caitlin Kimball.
Yeah, I don't know if that's my husband, maybe, who's joining virtually. I don't know if the host can mute him. Oh, there you go. Okay. I was seeing that earlier. I think it's probably my husband. He's joining virtually. Okay, great. Thank you, Jaime. I just want to echo the comments about the grants, that they are great opportunities to grow and enhance your business. And that my experience with the department is that everyone has been very responsive and very helpful. You can call them and say, I don't know how to answer this question. You know, can you give me some pointers, or can you give me a tip, or can you maybe point me in the direction of someone who, you know, can help me? Allie Rose and I are on speed dial sometimes. So I really recommend, you know, applying and at least considering the grants, or at least at the minimum talking to someone who you know, have seen as an awardee over the last few years, because they can give you some, you know, pointers and maybe walk you through the process.
Caitlin, the
Sure.
only thing I'll add, and I'll drop a link to the page in the chat, is Allie Rose also does office hours, and recently, last week, I believe, hosted a webinar for the program. If you didn't make it, it's fine. It's recorded. It's posted online, and I'll drop a link to that in the chat. But there's open office hours. The deadline is January 12th, so you still have some time. So please reach out. One of the things we feel really strongly about is if you think that your project may not fall comfortably within a particular category, please reach out to us so that way we can have a conversation. We don't want folks wasting your time. We also have some resources like the Small Business Development Center. Murray Gates is there. He's a wonderful resource to help folks write applications. So, and I have a little bit more on that later, but thank you, Caitlin.
Of course. And so just to kind of guide the rest of the discussion, so we have a couple of categories of questions that we're going to have the commissioner and Jaime answer. And these are based on responses that people input when we RSVP'd to the town hall. And so those include the USDA Disaster Relief Block Grant, the RRP grant, which is the Farmland Restoration Grant, Renee, I saw your question in the chat around food hubs. So kind of the CT food system overall and the infrastructure supporting that and how the department can better support that work. The land access block grant, the local capital and market access program, and then some time for question and answer at the end. So we have a few questions that we're going to start, that I'm going to ask the commissioner. If you have follow-up questions, please drop them in the chat. And then depending on our timing, so we can make it through every topic, we may pause and follow up them and save time at the end for us to come back to them. So yeah, so disaster relief block grant from the USDA. So we just wanted to ask around what's the expected timeline for this? And then in addition to that, you know, how will the department ensure that beginning farmers, new farmers, you know, all have access to this relief?
Yeah, thank you for that conversation or that topic, Caitlin. This is obviously something that the department is working on and spending a lot of time on. Some people may remember that it was earlier this year where we did a big announcement down in Northford talking about the opportunity. And we have been working with USDA on a weekly basis. Jaime, myself, Amy Fernand, who does or grants and contract specialist, and some others on the team trying to get over the finish line. So for folks who may not be aware, Congress passed a Farm Recovery and Support Block Grant in the continuing in December of 2024. Within that block grant were eligibility to all the New England states, Hawaii, and Alaska to provide disaster relief for farms that had weather-related losses for 2023 and 2024. The USDA, we have been allocated about $53 million from the USDA. We are working with them again on this weekly basis to try to get to the final program design. But I will share with you what our planned program is that we'll establish an average farm revenue. So the average farm revenue between 2020, 2021, and 2022, the 3-year average. And then it is our goal that we would have the difference between your farm revenue and your 2023 revenue and your farm revenue or your average farm revenue and your 2024 revenue. That would be what your eligibility for payment would be. Our plan is to pay up to 95% of that difference with a maximum payment of $1 million. It's been something that the USDA has not said no to, but they also haven't said yes to. We don't have any signed paperwork or anything, so we're still trying to work with it. Importantly, this is going to differ significantly from what the SDRP program that is currently open would do. USDA is only a 90% recovery, up to $900,000. We are 95 up to $1 million. And for uninsured farms, which we know in Connecticut, many farms are uninsured, you have to have a 30% loss trigger. We're not going to have a 30% loss trigger. There also won't be what they call the linkage requirement, which is the requirement to purchase a risk management tool, either crop insurance or NAP, for 2 years after you receive the payment. We would strongly encourage people to sign up for NAP or crop insurance, depending on what your production is. But we won't require it. And that's a pretty significant hurdle that I know has been a problem for especially new and beginning farmers to take advantage of previous USDA relief programs. We also know that a number of farms went through a tremendous amount of growth during the course of those years, and that their 2023 revenue might not differ because of weather, or might not show a loss due to the weather, but still had experienced a pretty significant loss. So we did receive verbal approval that for growing farms, they can self-certify what their farm revenue should have been if they had a normal production year. That is a new feature that actually, speaking about calling the department and having a conversation, Caitlin called us with her story, and we're like, yeah, that's legit, that's real. How do we address it? I'm happy to announce that we think we do have a way to address it. We think we have USDA approval on that. So that's really important. We're hoping that if this works out and that people are happy with the experience and with the payment process, that we would use this for the $10 million that was in the Connecticut Farm Bill for disaster relief, use it as a model. We are going through the process right now of contracting with a third-party administrator to create the portal, to create the formula. We can't look at tax documents in the department, so we need somebody to review Schedule Fs and things of that nature. And quite honestly, we all know that state bureaucracy moves slow. And so in order to move a little bit more quickly, we're hoping that a private firm will be able to get this built and up in the timeline that we're hoping. We have kind of an on-paper contracting deadline about for March 1st of next year. I'm hopeful that we will be able to sign all of our paperwork with USDA before then, but that's sort of an internal goal that we have both shared and committed to. It seems like it's far off, but Jaime and I have been on these calls since April, so it actually doesn't seem too far away for us, and there are still a number of things that we have to get done. Depending on how long and when we get USDA's approval will depend on how long the enrollment period is open. We want to make sure that we have plenty of time for farmers to get their paperwork together, work with technical assistance providers that we're planning on hiring, and submit their paperwork. And we know if we're looking at March, we're talking about going into the spring, people have a lot on their plates. So that would facilitate a longer application period. And then it would be my goal that we work with our contractor that payments are made, between 6 and 12 weeks after the application period closes. So those are some of our internal goals in the process. As I mentioned, we're going to be looking to have technical assistance providers out there to help farms with their application. I will say, if you haven't yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up for our disaster relief updates. I can drop it in the chat when I finish talking here. But we are sending out regular updates between every 6 and 8 weeks just to let people know where we are and what's happening. And that will be the first notification that people will get, outside of any sort of, press release or news media announcement. So I strongly encourage people to sign up for that. And also the ag report. We're putting those updates in our weekly ag report. So those are the two easiest places to find any sort of update or announcement. Jaime, I don't know if you have anything to add. I feel like I covered some of the high points, but we've been talking about this for so long, it's hard to remember what I left off the table there.
No, I think you covered it, Commissioner. I think what we really want to make sure folks realize is that we're really trying to be mindful of the very, vast number of scenarios. One of the things that we've realized while working with FSA is that the understanding of what ag in Connecticut looks like is very different than what ag in Nebraska might look like. So it's really been a learning curve for them to understand just how diverse our farms are. We're not trying to address, disaster losses for, a single commodity. We're trying to cover hundreds of different commodities. And so that's been quite a learning curve for them. So, but otherwise, absolutely covered everything, Commish. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes. So what I'm hearing is that it's hard to say for sure, but that hopefully, there would be an application period and a payment before the end of 2026 if you're a farmer and applying. Great.
Kaylin, with the system. But yeah, it is our goal that people will have that payment, hopefully, midsummer of 2026.
And I just want to say that I felt that you were very receptive to my farm story and to the feedback around how other, beginning farmers may have ramped up their businesses. So the income may vary drastically. So, for folks on the call, that's going to be a part of the application process, which differs greatly from like the traditional, USDA disaster program. So I think this is going to be really helpful for new and beginning farmers if you experienced a loss. All right, great. Moving on. So a couple minutes here to talk about the Farmland Restoration, Climate Resiliency and Preparedness, otherwise known as the RRP grant, which which did have a round, I think, I can't remember, last year or 2 years ago?
2024. 2024. Yes.
And so lots of questions. There were a couple in the chat at the beginning of the meeting, just around the next round of that grant and any updates on that. What can we expect from this program?
Sure. So we did an initial round of funding in 2024. And the reason for that change was that used to traditionally be known as the Farmland Restoration Grant Program. There was some statutory language changes which required us to pivot how we administer this grant program. It is now, it's in 2024, it was structured as a two-phase program. Everyone applied, and phase one was to work with a soil scientist to develop a farmland restoration climate resiliency plan. From that plan, farms were awarded to implement practices identified in that plan. And those practices could be, putting land into production. It could be improving drainage, creating silvopasture. It was a very open-ended program. And so long as it was a recommended practice or activity that aligned with USDA climate smart ag practices, and one that was recommended by the soil scientists that was assigned to the farm, it was something that we would be willing to cover. The end result of that program was we need to go back to the drawing board. It was really clunky. It was challenging for our farmers that participated. The soil scientists that we worked with were ones that we were required to work with because they were on state contract, and in some instances did not possess the level of expertise that we really would have liked to see when sending a soil scientist out to a farm. So we really need to go back to the drawing board. Amongst all of this, the woman who ran the program went home to be with her family. And so now we do not have the dedicated individual working on this program. The good news is that we did open up the position, and we are conducting interviews the 18th, 19th, and 22nd and 23rd. So I'm really optimistic after the first of the year, we'll have someone new come on board, and we're going to tackle working with our current awardees to get feedback from them about what would make the program not only more user-friendly, but a little bit more practical, and then consider how we can revise the program. Prior to establishing the program, we did a focus group, for lack of better words, to get feedback on where that's a lot of information without, really giving anyone anything. Well, being able to change the dynamics. So
I would expect sometime in the spring we'll be able to make an announcement as to when the next round will be eligible.
Great. Yeah, that's an excellent program. I think it's appealing to so many new and beginning farmers and just farmers as well, because there's no match component and there is a lot of flexibility as far as the project. So yes, thank you for the update on that. I'm sure we'll all be looking forward to more information. So our next question, we have a couple minutes to talk about, is the land access block grant. So this was one of this year's legislative wins, and we just wanted to know how you envision beginning farmers benefiting from this program, and then what's the high level timeline for this?
Yeah. And I only touched on this briefly in my opening comments because I knew we were going to get into it a little bit more here. So I'm sure a lot of people are interested in where that stands. So last year, the legislation, the authorizing legislation passed, and the authorizing bond allocation passed. But what did not happen is we did not get a staff person that we would have to run this program. And as we saw with RRP, we don't have additional staff capacity to run a program of any sort of significant size. So the goal this year is to increase our staff count. For people who don't know, our staff positions are legislative authorized. So we have a staff cap that is funded with general fund dollars, and so we need to increase that through the legislative process. But I'm hopeful that all the work that went in last year will continue, the collaborative nature to get the language and the bond authorization passed. Next steps. Next step number one is to get this on the bond commission's agenda. That would release the $10 million. Once we move down that path, we'll start with creating a guidance document. The new person would create a guidance document. We would hold as we have in previous programs, listening sessions, comment periods to make sure that we are hitting the right spot and addressing the right needs from the community. And then we could release and announce an enrollment period. I'm pretty excited about this program because, as important as our farmland preservation program is, 450 plus farms, 50,000 acres protected across the state, it's really not flexible. And we know that it takes a long time from the point of application to the point of closing. And we've reduced that significantly by about 40% over the past 5 or 6 years. But we still have room to tighten that up. And so we want to make sure that we'll continue that program, but we know that there are other tools out there. If you think about long-term reduced rents, that say a municipality could make town-owned land available for a farmer. Having a land trust come on top of our farmland preservation program with an OPAF, option to purchase ag value, which would put additional restrictions on the farm for the future. A incubator farm that would allow new and beginning farmers the first access to a significant amount of land to start their business. All of those things would be the sorts of things that would be eligible under the grant program as we envision it. If there are certain things that people are very interested in or want to make sure, the comment period be the right time to get that submitted, but also, don't wait. You could also let us know sooner than later to make sure we're incorporating it as we think about the program. But it's probably something that we wouldn't see until late 2026, I would imagine, just given the timeline, because we would have to wait till after July 1 for a staff count position to be eligible to hire that position and get them in place. So that's the time frame and sort of the high level thought process we're envisioning on that program.
Great. I think as Ellie said in the beginning too, if there are, members on this call that are interested in some of these programs or like how they fit into the legislative process, right? Like getting on the bond commission, what is a bond commission? NCTFA does have a policy group as well to join that kind of talks you through, some of these things if you're unfamiliar with the process. So thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to our last topic before our broader Q&A, which I saw there's a question in the chat that we'll come back to. So the local capital and market access program. So there's some uncertainty about the program, which is meant to provide down payment assistance for landowners. So what is the department's expectation for the program's future? How will the department safeguard opportunities for underserved farmers? And then I talk a little bit about how FarmLink plays into that.
So I'll give a quick response, then I'll let Jaime talk a little bit more about FarmLink. As of now, knock on wood, as of today, USDA has not given us any indication that LCMA is going away. We continue to do work. We continue to get reimbursed. So I think the fact that we've gone kind of through the churn of USDA canceling everything that they didn't like we may be safe on this one. Everything's a may. I don't want to speak in certainties, but LFPA was canceled in the first quarter of the year. A number of the other programs, it was kind of like if it wasn't canceled by April, they kind of forgot that those programs existed. So I'm hopeful that we can continue the work that we've been able to do. The department was the only state Department of Agriculture in the nation that was awarded an LCMA grant. So I take a lot of pride in the fact that we recognize that this was a need out there and took the steps to address it. But we're plugging along, which I think is good. So Jamie, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the details of LCMA and where we are on it, or swing right into FarmLink.
Sure. Well, one kind of leads into the other. So a major component of the Land Capital Market Access Program was the Farmland Access Grant, which was intended to provide down payment assistance to new and beginning farmers. We developed guidance. We submitted it to the USDA, and we have heard nothing. They have not told us to stop. They haven't told us to keep going. They just have submitted nothing. And in fact, I was chatting with Serena Thibodeau, who runs the program earlier today, and she submits the reports as required by our agreement. And there's been zero acknowledgement of even the reports being submitted. But nonetheless, they keep paying our invoices. So we keep moving the train down the tracks. So our major partners on that are Yukon Extension, and Robert plays a humongous role for Yukon on that program. We also are working a little bit with American Farmland Trust. And this funding really does a nice segue into the Connecticut FarmLink program. Serena Thibodeau is now overseeing the Connecticut FarmLink program as well. And we are moving forward with agreements with Yukon Extension and Land for Good to continue the relationship to support the program. There's been a nice, I'm going to call it a revamping of the program, and really bringing in technical assistance to support both landowners and land seekers. I'm going to share the presentation with folks, and I do have a slide on FarmLink where folks can, scan the QR code and really decide if it's something as a landowner or seeker that they're interested in pursuing. So I'm really looking forward to the changes that are coming to the program and really hoping that the technical assistance that will be provided in partnership with both Land for Good and Yukon Extension will really help move forward with matches in a new way. So I don't know. If anyone has any experience with FarmLink, we're always open, and Serena is always open to feedback. So if folks have any comments that they want to drop in the chat on FarmLink, please feel free to do that. So.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to say that we found our additional property that we're leasing in Milford through FarmLink. We went afternoon with our van full for the market. We left an hour early, and we signed a lease on Monday. It moved very quickly. It's been a great experience. And we've looked at it on a link if you have not. I made a profile one night when my daughter was first born. I was up at 3 a.m, and so it actually came to fruition and helped us. So thank you for those updates, Jamie and Commissioner. The next portion of this town hall is an audience Q&A. And we had a couple people put some questions in the chat. So I'm going to start with those, if that's okay, Commissioner. This first question here comes from Stacy. This actually piqued my interest a little bit. So we do have about 6 to 10 minutes left. So the question, how or what is the department doing to ensure the affordable housing movement does not infringe on protected lands and private . privately owned the country, which I believe that big story is the farm in New Jersey, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think one, I'll say, on our protected lands, the limitations are in the deed of the property. And there is a statutory way to take a parcel out of protection. It is a long and cumbersome process that involves multiple commissioners agreeing to it, a referendum by the community on it, a vote by the Board of Selectmen or Town Council or whatever the governing body is. So if it's protected, it's protected. And so that is something that is important to acknowledge. We have also been over the past 20 years really tightening up the deed language about how much and what can be built on for residences on a farm, on a protected farm. So to the extent of we have a limitation on the square footage that the house can be at this point. So it's a pretty significant and pretty tight proposal. The other thing, I've spoken to Commissioner Mosquera Bruno, the Commissioner of Housing, about how we need to make sure that we are finding the balance between farmland preservation and the access to farmland and housing. She agrees 100%. So we are in alignment with a sister agency. And I also think one of the important pieces of the housing bill that just passed was that the communities have a say in this. And so there's an opportunity for a community that wants to protect farmland and have farms in it to make sure that houses aren't being sited on that last parcel. So I think there are a number of ways that we can do our best to make sure that this won't happen. But like New Jersey, it might come up, right? And what happened in New Jersey was there was one last farm in a town surrounded by development. And it's my understanding the governor, the Secretary of Agriculture there, and the USDA Secretary of Agriculture and the US Secretary of Housing all had a call about how important it is to preserve that farm. And so, everybody kind of came together to acknowledge that that wasn't the desired outcome. Putting that land into housing wasn't what was intended with the statute that had recently been passed down there. So I think we can't give up, and we certainly can't stop paying attention to it. But I feel pretty good about where we are, given the conversations that I've had and given the structure that's built into the process at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have just discovered that I accidentally skipped one of our topics earlier, so this feeds into a question from Renee. We were going to discuss kind of the Connecticut food system overall and the role that food hubs play. So Renee's question was around, how we fund food hubs, what's the department's role in supporting the development and creation of food hubs, if you wanted to speak to that. And I apologize for skipping that point earlier.
That's right. I thought we were going to get to it, and glad that Renee did point it out because it is important. And that is part of our resiliency through diversity effort at the department is expanding food hubs. We just released our second round of not just, but we released our second round of the regional food systems infrastructure proposal. It was a USDA funded grant program that was to do that sort of middle of the chain infrastructure. So that was, I think we had just over $1 million there, Jaime, between the two rounds that we were able to release.
Actually 2.1 million.
2.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, that's one way we've been able to support food hubs. I will say, and this is a challenge for us because we don't have the magic wand to get everything into alignment. We can only respond through the grant applications that we receive. And so we can only fund a food hub or a processing kitchen or aggregator if they apply. We don't have discretionary dollars that we can spend on projects that we think are really important. I would say, and I feel this way, that food hubs are very important. And I think if people are very interested in moving this forward, that it would take a concerted effort like the Farmland Access Grant Program, where we get a dedicated pot of money, a dedicated programmer, and we can award only on food systems and infrastructure. I think that's the best way to organize that. And then we could do larger grants to organizations and entities. Yeah,
Commissioner, can I say something really quickly? It's
yeah,
Renee. Sorry.
no, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm extremely appreciative of the recent grant that the Food Hub was awarded for FSMA food safety certification, which is actually gonna help the Food Hub and all of the over 45 farmers that I work with become certified vendors to get into bigger markets. But something that I think we really need to do is come back to the drawing table to see how food hubs and the farmers and the USDA and DOAG specifically, we can all work together to address these major problems. So LFPA and all of those programs have been extremely beneficial, and we've been hurting. And food hubs, in particular across the state, have been extremely resilient and crafty to fill in those holes that the farmers have kind of accessed as lifelines to continue their progress moving forward. And so, kind of below all of that, farmers markets and food hubs, we've all been talking and working together to kind of come up with different plans to address what the farmers' needs are, and those needs are, outlets. So it's really great having all of these different programs and opportunities to continue to build out our farms with infrastructure. But the number one thing that we all need, I'm also a farmer and have been for 20 years, is avenues of various distribution points for various markets for us to break into. And that's where I think food hubs are so important. And I just want to be able to work more closely with you all so that we can level up and leverage what's already in place.
Amen to all that, Renee. I mean, I'm with you 100%. The challenge that we have is we don't have the tools to do larger grants without a new grant program. And so that's where we need the legislature to create, again, like a farmland access pool where we could do some of those projects and do more of that coordination. We prioritize food hubs and food system work in all of our grants. That is, we've made it that's more likely to get funded than some other types of applications. But until we get a legislative change, that's our only tool, unfortunately.
Thank you. Yes. And I will say too that just based on just one quick thing to add that has, I think, been helpful and that Renee has helped lead a lot of is just the collaboration piece. So some of these projects or some of these initiatives that the different food hubs have come up with or that they're working on have only happened because we meet and discuss together. We try to work together. So just if there are people on this call that are really interested in supporting the work of food hubs, if you already do and you want to take it further, Renee is a great person to reach out to. You can reach out to me for City Seed. Just we meet together and we talk about these things. And a lot of the work that we've done has come out of these group conversations. So I'm happy to hear that food hubs are a priority at the department. And I know the recent RFSI grant program was very helpful to a lot of folks in that regard. Okay, we have
Caitlin,
about five. Oh, go ahead,
sorry,
Jamie.
Caitlin, I'll say
No, sure.
along those lines, Serena convenes what we've internally dubbed to be the aggregator group. And there's actually a meeting tomorrow at Real Food Share down in Newtown. So if folks are interested in participating, please just drop an email in the chat with the information.
Yes,
So.
looking forward to seeing you, Renee, and some other folks on the call tomorrow at that meeting. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. Some other questions. So, how will the department help farmers understand and access the next farm tax credits? And then, how will the department encourage municipalities to promote awareness? And I will just say that when I was filing my business's personal or the business form with the assessor's office, the woman at the assessor's office asked me if I had heard about the new changes at the department, and I that made me smile. So, yes, just take it away, Commissioner.
Well, that's great. I think I'm glad they're paying attention. That's pretty remarkable. So that's really great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to do our normal outreach that we do for any program announcement. I know on the investment tax credit in particular, I know Farm Credit East is very excited about this. They held a webinar 2 weeks ago, I think, that was open to the public. So I would, I think, we will be doing events. We will be doing, press releases and other sort of, public outreach. But I think people need to keep their eyes open on it as well. And then for municipalities on the farm or on the tax assessment, property tax relief, I think we should probably, Jaime, work with Rebecca and do a letter to towns and COGS to share out that this is available for those who aren't aware. The property tax assessment moved from, I think it was $100,000 to $250,000 with an additional $250 that the town could extend on a town by town basis. So a huge property tax relief program that hadn't been changed or modified in probably 40 years that was passed in the Connecticut Farm Bill. But yeah, I mean, we'll certainly be sharing out information, and I encourage people to stay in touch on that.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Two more questions I'm seeing here. The status of the farmers market nutrition program next year. We know that it was, funded at a slightly less level this year. I believe more at the federal end, not the state end. So if you wanted to just provide an update on that.
Yeah, we don't have our numbers yet for the federal or for the state program, but the feds were at a reduced allocation. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jaime, but they do it off of your average usage in the prior years. And so because I talked about $1 million and $900,000 for 25 and 24 respectively. I didn't say how big of a jump that was. So we did $1 million in 2024 and $900,000 this year through the combined state and federal dollars for both senior and WIC farmers market nutrition programs. Our highest year prior was around $650,000. So we increased the amount redeemed by about 50% of our previous numbers. So that's going to change the baseline that USDA is going to use for the calculation. If USDA continues to use that sort of calculation, obviously, as Robert had put in the chat earlier, there's a lot of churn and a lot of uncertainty at USDA. But I will say, when the governor asks about, federal problems, he asks about farmers market nutrition programs. The legislature, when I'm before the legislature or the appropriations committee, the majority of my time there is spent talking about the farmers market nutrition programs. So there's a lot of attention and a lot of recognition that FMNP is a great tool for families and seniors to have access to great products and a great way for the state to invest in supporting Connecticut farmers. So, well, obviously, I can't guarantee, especially with the USDA as it is currently situated. Certainly, at the state level, there's a lot of interest to make sure FMNP continues to move along.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, and I just think too, again, we've had a couple kind of mini call to actions for the group potentially out of this, but a great way to highlight that work is to, share your experience as a farmer redeeming these nutrition benefits with your legislator, online, like there's a lot of different ways, that NCTFA or the policy group could, explain more about that. But the more that we highlight the impact of these nutrition benefits being redeemed, the more traction we get in funding them. So thank you, Commissioner. We have one last question. Given future cuts to SNAP, would Connecticut consider implementing a program like, sorry, my chat moved, like HIP and M in Massachusetts, or other incentives for low-income consumers to purchase from farmers?
Yeah, 100%. I would love to have a HIP program. We're just short the money in the program. When we talk about using policy to drive outcomes, this would be another one that we need to get passed. It's out HIP in Massachusetts, and the amount of benefit that it has for Massachusetts residents and Massachusetts farmers. I can share that I don't think any legislator understands what HIP is, or that it even exists. And so this is, again, like farmland access. I think this has got to be an advocacy campaign, to create a pool that we could use. But I think. I mean, I could probably retire if we got HIP. I mean, that has been one of my, public policy goals for 20 years. I think it's a great program. The governor loves SNAP doubling programs. He loves FMNP. This is a way I think that we'd need to organize, but it would be a huge win for residents and farmers if we could get that done. So as you at NCTFA are thinking about your public policy priorities, not that I'm on the policy committee, but I would put food hubs and HIP as right up there, one and two, because they are so important for the future of the industry.
I agree, Commissioner. Thank you for that response. I see there's a lot of enthusiasm to this idea in the chat. Yes, and I think again, Ella put in the chat that there will be a session at the NCTFA conference, the Farmer to Farmer conference, on giving public testimony. Which is an excellent topic to learn about if you don't have experience with that, on how to tell your story effectively, right, to impact the legislature. So we are at the end of our time, and I just really wanted to thank you, Commissioner and Jaime, for attending. I feel very inspired by this group. There's many people on this call that I know and that I work with regularly. There's many of you that I don't, that I hope to get to know soon. And we just really appreciate your willingness to come and speak with us for another year in a row, and to provide more, updates and also answer these questions. So it's really helpful for our work. Oh, I'm just looking at the chat. Commissioner Robert is showing you some love.
Thanks, Robert.
So yes, we thank you guys so much for attending tonight. And I just want to close with that my experience with the department is that everyone has been very accessible and just willing to talk to you with whatever program it is. You have a question about a grant, you have a question about a farmer's market that you're need more information on. Just I really encourage you to reach out to the department and develop a relationship with the many staff members, and they're here to help. So with that, we are going to conclude, and we really appreciate everyone attending tonight, and I hope everyone's warm I'm gonna go out. I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna plug in the heater to keep my winter squash warm tonight. So we'll go assess that in a moment.
As somebody who had some of your pumpkins yesterday as
Yes.
part of our dinner, I strongly suggest you do that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I know. We'll see. So, alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye,
Have a
Mel.
great night.
Thank you.
So
Bye.
much. Thank you, Caitlin and Ella, for coordinating.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys.
Good night.